As I said, this is likely to be a short Midrash. Before we get started on it, though, we need to acknowledge that we have enjoyed some food together. So, what our scripture tells us in Devarim 8, verse 10, is, "So you'll eat and be satisfied, and you'll bless Adonai, your God, for the good land He has given you." Let's do that. Abba, we have eaten and we're satisfied. We thank you for the land. It's in Yeshua's name we thank you. Amen. All right. So we are the slides for the Midrash that I've got here are really focused on the Haftorah for it, because the readings were from Shemot and Bamidbar. We go over those books when we do as part of the regular Torah readings. We may not always get to read sections from the Haftorah, or at least study those. So we're taking a look at what the specific passages we looked at when we read the Haftorah. And the first, although it started in 37 verse 1, some of the key passages are at the end of our reading. And really, I'm also interested in what comes after that in terms of when we read essentially the rest of the passage. So it's from the phraseology that is discussed. Either this is from the Complete Jewish Bible, so you could say, Son of Man or human being. These bones are the whole house of Israel. And they are saying, our bones have dried up, our hope is gone, we're completely cut off. Therefore prophesy, say to them that Adonai Elohim says, my people, I'll open your graves and make you get up out of your graves. And so, and then, of course, to go into your land of Israel. And continuing then with the last couple of verses from our readings, it says in verse 13, chapter 37, 13, "And you will know that I am Adonai when I have opened your graves and made you get up out of your graves, my people. I'll put my spirit in you, and you'll be alive. Then I will place you in your own land, and you will know that I, Adonai, have spoken." And so that's what our text says for those passages. So what about what's next then? How would you talk about what do you say about that? Is there any commentaries about that? Well, there are some commentaries that discuss this passage. And before we get to that, though, we can say that the whole house of Israel, it doesn't just mean the house of Judah, it doesn't certainly just mean the house of Ephraim or Israel in that sense, but it's saying that both houses of Israel are dry bones until the Ruach revives them. And so it's something that the Ruach does, the Spirit does, but it's not just Judah, it's also Ephraim or Israel, both houses together. And it's it's interesting that Rashi, 1,000 years ago, commented on this, roughly 1,000 years ago, and he agrees with this idea. He says, in the phraseology, of course, it's hard to disagree with because the text says it directly. What Rashi comments on for the section of our passage is these bones are all the house of Israel. He says they are an intimation and an example of the entire house of Israel. For they say, our bones become dried up from the the trouble. Our hope is lost. The trouble, the hope is lost, and what future hope can we have for salvation? And so that takes on a view of, if you will, a defeated attitude. If you're dry bones and your hope is lost, that definitely takes you to a point where, what's the point anymore? If you're dry bones and your hope is lost, and you have no future hope, then that really puts you in a pretty bad place. But that's not where our section ends at all. In fact, we see that it has a brighter future. It tells us the hope, our hope is perishes, what our text says. But then this passage, it kind of seems to talk about, just the northern kingdom to the whole house of Israel. So reading previous in 36, looking at how the northern kingdom of Israel, this now talks about the whole house of Israel. And so two of the themes from our reading from Ezekiel 37 is that it's the whole house of Israel, but there is a resurrection happening that is happening to the individuals of the whole house of Israel, and that it's not just they're being resurrected, it says they're going to be returning to their own land. So resurrection and return are themes from this section of Ezekiel 37. And so when we keep reading the verses that follow that, now this is after our portion ends, but after verse 14 comes verse 15, which is instructive, and it says, "The word of Adonai came to me, you human being, take one stick and write on it for Yehuda and those joined to him among the people of Israel. Next, take another stick and write on it for Yosef, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel who are joined with him." So looking at that, we talked about the whole house of Israel in chapter 37, 1 through 14. This picks up right there with, again, the two sticks, if you will, representing, again, the whole house of Israel. One stick for Yosef, which is representing Ephraim or the northern kingdom, Israel, and the other stick for Judah and those joined with the people of Israel, or really the people of Israel, but that were from Judah. But it's often called a two-stick prophecy. But verse 17 says something interesting, doesn't it? It says, "Finally, bring them together into one stick." So really, the two sticks don't remain two sticks. They become one stick. I think that's an important factor, that the two sticks become one in your hand. And then this is the hand. This is of Ezekiel that we talked about, Ezekiel's hand.
So would that be more like, instead of him holding two sticks in his hand bring together, be like put them end to end, and he would hold the joining part under one stick?
It's hard to say exactly what the visual would be on that, whether he's putting it's
side by side
or end to end. Yeah, don't know. But it seems like they meld together, become, from the two sticks become one in some fashion. Doesn't really give us a good visual of exactly how that is. But if they're joined together side by side, I think they make them a stronger stick, if you will, versus a lengthier stick if they were joining end to end. I don't know. Either way, the two sticks become and are joined together. I've seen visuals that show the sticks wrapping around each other. Sort of
I've seen all kinds of representation.
Yeah.
I guess to me, the one stick would make more sense if it looks like one stick.
Mhm.
And they're joined together by what? By his hand.
Yeah.
So maybe not.
Well, you should draw that. The one stick melded together right at the hand point, perhaps.
That would be a staff. Then.
Well, typically staffs are made of wood, so it'd be two sticks, two pieces of wood, two trees. So, two sticks become one stick or one tree in the hand of Yah. Then I think that this is, these are, Ezekiel is a prophet, but this is a prophecy that has not yet come to pass, even today. The passages that follow are explain what the prophecy is about. And we can tell that from the explanation of the prophecy that this has not happened yet. And so this is, it's one of those things where we see that this is going to happen, or it turns out that Ezekiel is a false prophet, which I don't believe to be true. I'm saying that this prophecy has been out there for a long time, and yet still to this day has not yet come about. And for that, I don't have the passages on the screen, so I'm going to turn there and read them. You can follow along in your Bibles if you like to. Again, it's Ezekiel 37. It's continuing a couple of verses after the end of our Haftorah section. This is picking up at 37:18. When your people ask you what all this means, tell them that Adonai Elohim says this: I will take the stick of Yosef, which is in the hand of Ephraim, together with the tribes of Israel who are joined with him, and put them together with the stick of Yehudah, and make them a single stick, so they become one in my hand. The sticks on which you write are to be in your hand as they watch. And say to them that Adonai Elohim says, I will take the people of Israel from among the nations where they have gone, and gather them from every side and bring them back to their own land. I will make them one nation in the land on the mountains of Israel, and one king will be king for all of them. They will no longer be two nations. They will never again be divided into two kingdoms. They will never again defile themselves with your idols, their detestable things, or any of their transgressions. But I will save them from all the places where they have been living and sinning. I will cleanse them, so they will be my people, and I will be their God. My servant David will be king over them, and all of them will have one shepherd. They will live by my rulings and keep and observe my regulations. They will live in the land I gave to Yaakov, my servant, where your ancestors lived. They will live there, so they, their children, and their grandchildren forever. And David, my servant, will be their leader forever. I will make a covenant of peace with them, an everlasting covenant. I will give them, increase their numbers, and set my sanctuary among them forever. My home will be with them. I will be their God, and they will be my people. The nations will know that I am Adonai, who sets Israel apart as holy, when my sanctuary is with them forever. Takes us to the end of chapter 37. So it's essentially saying that if Yah is dwelling with Israel forever in his sanctuary forever, it's essentially saying that my people will be my Mishkan. My people will be where I am, my dwelling place. When the idea of the Mishkan being related to the word Shekhinah for the essentially the glory of Yah dwelling with them, it's the idea is that it's my sanctuary will be among them forever. indicates that he is dwelling with Israel forever. We'll continue to see this theme when we continue on reading in Ezekiel, particularly into chapter in the 40s of Ezekiel. But what other thoughts do you have about what we just read before we go on?
So if it's so far in the future from the time that the prophecy was made, in the intervening time, Yeshua HaMashiach has come, and we really have a different idea, I suppose, of what sanctuary would be, or whatever, or for that matter, who Adonai's people are. So I don't think we look at it as like being literally Israelites now. So in light of that, how would we interpret the two sticks that are being put together?
Well, I think there's two things, at least two things to talk about with that. One is with the two sticks, one being Judah, which is well known and identified, but the other stick being Ephraim, which is not well notified. Say again?
Mixed in the nation.
Mixed in the nations has never returned as Ephraim. Now we look at, you can see in modern times there have been some tribes identified from the northern kingdom. Beit Menashe is essentially located in India, and so many of them have returned to Israel, of course. And what's identified as the tribe of Dan, as the Ethiopian Jews have returned also to Israel, but not in the fullness that we see here, representing the whole house of Israel. And what some have commented on in terms of Ephraim being scattered to the nations, as the prophecy about the sons of Abraham will be, widespread as the sand in the sea, the stars in the heavens. That part of the way this will come about is that because that Ephraim has been spread about as an unseparable lump among the nations, that is how this prophecy will come back together. That there is from the nations will come those who are identified as from the northern kingdom. In a similar sort of way, we see in Isaiah 66, talking about taking from the nations those to be Levites. And so there could be some being brought in and being given a tribe in that way, although this doesn't say that specifically. But in order for the two-stick prophecy to come about as it's written, at least, you'll have to identify who is Ephraim, who is the northern kingdom, who are the people that are coming with Ephraim. In 37, it talks about for Yosef, the stick of Ephraim.
Isn't there another prophecy, Wayne, that talks about when he's restoring Israel, that he will restore the tents of Judah first? Could that not be what's happened now?
I think that, yes, in terms of, we like to think of things as happening right away.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't say how long the span of time that process was going to take.
Right. Because we've seen, if you look at this in terms of returning to your own land, that's happened in part now with mostly tribe of Judah returning to and starting the country called Israel today, returning to that land. So there seems like it's in parts, but I think that we can't. I think it kind of goes with this prophecy coming as the restoration, if you will. Think about we read today in the gospel about we thought it was going to restore the kingdom at this time. And it's really what we see, the question that's asked of the Talmudim to Yeshua in Acts chapter 1, where it says,
Will you at this time restore the kingdom?
yeah, this this may not be the best rendering, but this is Acts 1:6 says, when they were together, they asked him, Lord, are you at this time going to restore self-rule to Israel, or the kingdom of Israel, being a better way of saying it? He answered, you don't need to know the dates or the times. The Father has kept these under his own authority. But you'll receive power when the Ruach HaKodesh comes upon you. You'll be my witnesses both in Jerusalem and all Yehuda and Shomron, indeed to the ends of the earth or the ends of the land. So Yeshua doesn't chastise them saying you don't understand the prophecy. He's essentially saying, and he's not saying that there will not be a time when self-rule or the kingdom is restored to Israel in his answer. He just says you don't need to know the dates or times for this. So he's not, although I think traditional Christianity has ruled out the restoration of the kingdom to Israel, Yeshua doesn't rule that out when he answers the Talmudim here in Acts 1:6. And I think that this prophecy that we read today is all about restoring the kingdom to Israel, where it says that David, my servant David, will be king over them. And that's an interesting passage about David, because what we see in other places, not necessarily here, but we'll see that there is something about that. I'll show it. It's actually on the, I think, the following slide. But again, I said this has never come to pass to this day. Where they've been scattered and being brought back to land is happening somewhat. But we're also being told in Isaiah 54 that there is, and previously in Ezekiel, that there will be a covenant of peace that is, again, a future covenant as well. So that has never been restored, so to speak. But this next slide is, I think, interesting in that you look at the Targumim, the Aramaic translations with commentary, for several of the passages that are somewhat difficult in the sense you look at as David being resurrected, but there's a couple of passages in Jeremiah 30 verse 9 where the Hebrew text reads David will be king over them. Hosea 4 verse 5 and Jeremiah 30 verse 9 don't read that way. They say Messiah, son of David, will be king over them. And although this passage doesn't say that here in Ezekiel, the Targum for Ezekiel, but it seems very interesting that perhaps this is in fact talking about the answer to the question that the Talmudim asked in Acts 1:6 is that Messiah, son of David, will be king over them, and that's still coming at a future time. And will Yosef be the believers, if you will, messianic believers that are coming out of the nations to join with Judah? That is certainly a possibility that our text doesn't say for certain. It says, for Yosef, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel who are joined with him. We see that this joining of the house of Israel with the house of Judah. And who is the house of Israel? In a sense, we see from Galatians chapter 3, verse 29, it says, you are what? Sons of Abraham if you believe in Messiah. And so to be a son of Abraham, of course, there are other sons of Abraham, but the idea is if you are now one with the people of Israel, I think by that phraseology, to be a descendant of Abraham if you are in Messiah. So does that bring you into one of the two divisions of the tribes, the northern kingdom or the southern kingdom? It's only possible because we don't know what happened to most of the northern kingdom. They became interspersed with the nations and basically joined to the nations. So it doesn't really answer necessarily directly your question, Denver, about what is about to, what does the prophecy hold in light of Yeshua? But I think that Yeshua referred to the prophecy about returning the kingdom of Israel when he answered the question that his disciples asked, is it now? And he said, it's not time. And we see that the idea was common that the Messiah would restore the kingdom to Israel. Based on the readings in Ezekiel 37, we see that that is something that is going to happen. And the two from going to Emmaus asked the question, as did generally his disciples we read in Acts chapter 6. So the question isn't an invalid one. He doesn't say don't ask that question anymore. That's never going to happen. He doesn't say that at all. He says it's not time for you to know this. Your time right now is to do these things. And I think that possibly, if you say, well, that's not going to happen, for 2,200 years from now, or whatever his answer would be disheartening to them. You say, well, that's not going to happen until a long time from now. He didn't dwell on that. He just told them, this is what your marching orders now. You're to spread the word from here and outward to the rest of the ends of the earth, so to speak. So they're still marching with that idea to spread the gospel message to the ends of the earth. I think that in some way or another, that will mean that those who are being gathered in will be part of one of these two tribes, or the two sticks, if you will, the stick of Ephraim and the stick of Judah.
As far as it goes, to me, when you give the name of the king, we say, the Windsors or the Habsburgs or whatever. And if you look at a name anciently from Rome, Caesar, and then what happened? That started being the name of theirs. And then we got, in German, we got the Kaiser, and in Russia, we got the Tsars. And it's like that name just kind of got carried down through. So to me, the family of David being promised to not lack for an heir on the throne, when it refers to David, just like when we refer to Israel, we're not referring specifically to the man Yaakov necessarily, we're referring to the descendants. I think when we say
B'nai
David
Israel
there, we're going to be referring to his lineage is always going to be holding the throne.
Yeah,
Or is destined to be eternal.
I guess the point, it's not really a counterpoint to that, but the text only says David will be king over them. It doesn't say the house of David or David's descendants. Whereas some of the Aramaic targums say it will be Messiah, son of David, doing that.
Right, but if it had said that it was the whole house of Yaakov, we wouldn't say, oh, wait, one man or whatever. We understand when it says this, it's referring to all of that man's descendants, and they're just named by whoever the progenitor was in that family. So for me, it's not a problem whether it says David or whether it says Messiah, son of David. To me, either way, I understand, even if it says David, that ultimately it's going to mean Mashiach, descended from David.
If it is David, that would certainly be an argument for resurrection, if you want to look at it that way as well. Because with the whole house of Israel being dry bones, there'll be a resurrection in general from those, and perhaps there's talking about David being resurrected with them, potentially.
No,
All right. As I said, this is essentially a pretty short midrash this evening, and that was really my last slide, except for a cute dog slide, which is played by this one. Dixie has her baby.
Sharon, dead cat?
No, that's her baby. Jotham will trade that for lots of back scratches.
Play with me.
So we didn't really discuss the Torah portion at all, or even really the the Ketuvim Nesarim much reading. Anybody? Were there any questions from those that came up during this week or during our readings today? There's a it kind of there is a commentary kind of nests with it. We had a previous discussion about the validity of the what's understood to be a Sabbath day's journey a couple of weeks ago, I don't remember now. There's based on the theory that the resurrection was on Shabbat instead of on Yom Rishon, the idea of a Sabbath day's journey and that how would you, because this is like 7 miles, so it's much further away than the kilometer roughly that is understood to be the Sabbath day's journey in the book of Acts, at least. That says basically how far you can walk out of the city and get back before nightfall. And the thought is that you could, at least the argument is that if it's seven miles, you could walk out 7 miles, walk back 7 miles, and get back before dark. And that's the intent of the Sabbath day's journey. In other words, how far you can go out and then come back in before it gets dark. I don't know if that's the answer, but that's a defense of trying to defend, if you will, the evidence is for a Sabbath day resurrection, kind of based on the Hebrew text of Matthew 28, or even the Greek text of Matthew 28, verse 1. But anything else?
Okay, so what became of the spices then that the women prepared that when they got there and found the tomb empty, that they had all this stuff they had made and nothing to do with it?
Don't know. I mean, it doesn't really say. But one of the things that's interesting is in terms of could within traditional Jewish thought, could you anoint a dead body on Shabbat? Is it which is we talked about this, which is of a greater weight? Do you now anoint the body on Shabbat, or are you allowed, is that considered work? The answer to that is it is within the realm of caring for a body that you're allowed to anoint the body on Shabbat. What you can't do is you can't lift up a limb to do it. And certainly there'd have to be a time break. If you didn't have the spices, there'd be a time break that wasn't a Shabbat that you could buy the spices on before you could, do it, bring it, do the anointing on Shabbat. I don't know.
To buy them and to prepare them, because it does say they prepared them.
Right. You probably you buy them separately and mix them together, I would imagine, or mix them with some sort of oil, I guess.
Cook them or heat them or.
Yeah, I don't know what would go into the preparation of it, but typically when you're making some sort of oil, you have to have a anointing oil. You would heat. You have to kind of melt the spices into the
Does it actually use the word anoint? For the herbs and spices and everything?
I don't know.
Because I don't know about that culture, but I seem to recall that like in other cultures, they would put spices and herbs and some types of vegetables, wrap it up in the body to make the flesh decay quicker so that they could put the bones in the ossuary boxes. Could that be a relationship to the same thing? In other words, making the skin decay quicker.
Well, in our passage in 23:56, it says something like, "Then they went back home to." Well, let's see. I'll read back a couple of verses. It was preparation day, and the Shabbat was about to begin. The women who They come with Yeshua from the Galilee followed. They saw the tomb and how his body was placed in it. Then they went back home to prepare spices and ointments. On Shabbat, the women rested in obedience to the commandment. But this English translation is the first day of the week. The idea would be, it would say on the first of the Sabbaths is how it would literally be in the Greek side of it. So if it's Sabbaths or first day of the week, which is sort of that's the questionable part. It doesn't say anoint, but this phrase uses spices and ointments. But so it'd be something that you would rub on to or place on the skin, I guess, of the body. But if it was a Shabbat when they went, in other words, if there's the first day of unleavened bread and then a weekday and then Shabbat, they could buy the ointments, if you will, and prepare them on the weekday, and then
They'd have to wait till after Shabbat to go put them with the body.
well, possibly, but what I was getting at was it is still allowed you read it in the oral tradition about what you can do with a body on
What about
Sabbath.
scripture?
Say again?
He's saying
Scripture.
Oral
Tradition
tradition
has
is
a
a letter
lot
of
of
the word.
things that to me is bull crap. So what about scripture?
Well, you tell me. The scriptures
I
say
don't know, that's what I'm
don't
asking.
anoint the body on Shabbat.
Does it?
Doesn't address the fact.
But it's left up to interpretation, what's called the work.
Well, I suppose you can say that. I mean, what is it? It's considered a work that is a work of mercy. To just
So
like,
why would they wait then?
well,
so the suggestion would be here, the only thing that they waited for was to purchase and prepare it. And as soon as they had that, even though it was Shabbat, they headed out to the
No, they waited
To
until
many
after
ways.
Shabbat, right?
well,
They bought and prepared on the day of the week between the two.
it's what it sounds like is that on the first day of unleavened bread, that's the Shabbat where it says that they rested in obedience to the commandment. On the weekday that followed that, if it was if that was a quote unquote a Thursday, quote unquote, on the Friday they could have purchased the stuff
And prepared.
and prepared it, but they went actually on Shabbat to anoint the body. Maybe they couldn't get it done in time. I don't know.
So when she went to the tomb, doesn't it actually say early the first day of the week?
In most English translations, it does. The literal
from the Greek.
from the Greek is the first of the Sabbaths, or it could be that. I mean, it could be either one. It literally would be the first of the Sabbaths, or could be interpreted to be that way. Again, it's an argument that's talking about the timeline or the chronology of the resurrection, and that's the question we're talking about here. So, from a traditional standpoint, the women could anoint a body on Shabbat and not be considered Sabbath breakers in Israel in the first century. If that makes sense. Okay. Well, we will close out. We thank you for allowing us to midrash on your word, to study it. We thank you for your wisdom and your insights. We thank you in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Hot delivered or not?
We've got the stuff here to do it.